I'm a cat demon who's cultivated for 1,000 years, trapped now in the body of a female general. She'd clearly won a great battle, yet rumors of colluding with the enemy had reduced her to a camp prostitute. That undefeatable female general, her hand and foot tendons had been severed, leaving her at the mercy of third-rate soldiers. A monk from the temple once told me, "Save her, and I'll grant you one wish," thinking of the 10,000-year golden elixir I'd craved for so long. I licked the fur on my paws and dove straight into her body without a second thought. Revenge for her, sure, toppling the imperial court and taking the emperor's life while I'm at it. Heh, I'll take the job. I'm a 1,000-year-old cat demon, a black cat in my true form. Besides loving fish and sunbathing, my greatest desire is to get my paws on that old monk's 10,000-year golden elixir. That thing smells so divine it makes my mouth water. But the monk said I lack sufficient merit. I'm just a cat. I don't steal, I don't rob, and I even catch mice for the temple. What more could they ask for? One day, I was napping on a beam when the old monk called me over. He pointed to a vision in a basin of water, a woman covered in blood, lying in a filthy military tent. Save her, and the elixir is yours, he said. I watched as several armored men leered and closed in on her. Her eyes were empty, dead, filled with utter despair. She's Munanji, the general who defends the realm. The monk said, undefeated in 100 battles, yet framed for colluding with the enemy. Her tendons were cut, and she was demoted to a camp prostitute. I licked my claws. Human grudges have never interested me, but the scent of that golden elixir seemed to drift right under my nose. How? I asked. Possess her, live her life, settle all her grievances for her. I stared into the basin as one soldier lunged at her, tearing at her already tattered clothes. Munanji's body trembled. But she had no strength left to resist, just a little revenge. I'm an old hand at this. Those weasels who bullied me in the mountains, their grave grass is already 3 feet tall. Heh, deal, I said. With a leap, I dived into the basin. In an instant, the world spun violently around me. An indescribable pain racked every inch of my bones, as if they were being crushed one by one. I had become Munanji, #2, once my consciousness settled into this body. I finally understood what hell on earth truly meant, the searing agony of severed tendons, the body covered in a crisscross of old and new wounds. Every inch of skin screamed in pain. Worst of all, a man with yellow, decaying teeth was pinning me down. The stench of his sweat and cheap wine was so revolting I nearly vomited up the dried fish I'd eaten the night before. You bitch, how dare you glare at me, he sneered, slapping me hard across the face. What's a general to me now? You're nothing but our plaything. Fragments of Munanji's memories flooded my mind. It was her who'd personally promoted this man, Zhong Wang, from a lowly cook to a third-rate soldier. I laughed, not Munanji's bitter, enduring smile, but the excited, cruel grin of a cat demon spotting its prey. You're asking for death. Zhong Wang froze for a moment, then laughed even more wildly. Death? I'll make you scream in ecstasy before you die today. He leaned down, his putrid breath fanning my face. Ready to kiss me, my chance. Biting back the pain, I mustered the last ounce of strength left in this broken body and jerked my head sideways. My fangs, tempered by 1,000 years of demonic power, were far from ordinary. I sank them deep into his ear. Ah! A blood-curdling scream tore through the tent. I didn't let go, savoring the sickening sensation of flesh tearing apart. Warm blood gushed into my mouth. Disgusting. He thrashed wildly, pounding my head with his fists. But I refused to release my grip. Once I sink my teeth into prey, it's life or death. It's in my nature. The harder he hit, the deeper I bit until I heard the crisp snap of cartilage breaking. He collapsed, too weak to struggle any longer. I spat out the mangled piece of flesh with a sound of disgust. He clutched his bleeding ear, staring at me in terror. I propped myself up halfway, my blood-stained lips curling into a sinister smile. Who's next? #3. Zhong Wang scrambled out of the tent. Tripping over his own feet in his haste, I lay back on the cold straw mat, and the pain washed over me again, more intense than before. That single act had drained every last bit of my strength. My demonic power was suppressed by this mortal flesh. Only a tiny sliver remained at my disposal. First priority. repair this shattered body. I closed my eyes, focused my mind, and guided the faint wisp of demonic energy flowing through my veins toward the severed tendons, like a warm stream. The energy seeped into the broken, tangled tissues, mending them at a speed imperceptible to the naked eye. The process was far more agonizing than the moment my tendons had been cut. Cold sweat soaked my hair, but I didn't make a sound. This pain was nothing compared to being struck by heavenly thunder 49 times. Through the agony, Mu Nanji's memories surged forth more clearly than ever. A great victory at the border. She'd led 30,000 soldiers to annihilate 100,000 enemy troops. When the victory report reached the capital, however, it wasn't rewards that awaited her, but a charge of high treason. The man who'd accused her was Li Hachi, her deputy general, the very man she'd once trusted with her life. The charge, colluding with the enemy. The evidence, a private letter supposedly written by her to the enemy general. The handwriting was a near-perfect forgery. The emperor flew into a rage. Not a single minister in the entire court spoke up for her. Those former colleagues who'd accepted her favors, who'd sworn to stand by her side through thick and thin, all of them fell silent. Then came the punishment. Her martial arts were stripped away, her tendons severed, her title revoked, and she was reduced to a camp prostitute. From the heights of glory to the depths of degradation, she'd raged, she'd despaired, she'd burned with injustice. But there was nothing she could do. Rest easy, I whispered to the lingering fragment of her soul. I'll avenge you, I'll settle all your hatreds. Those who betrayed you, humiliated you, wronged you, I'll make them pay 100-fold. I could feel the suffocating resentment coiled in the depths of this body ease, if only slightly. As my demonic power circulated, the excruciating pain in my tendons began to subside. I still couldn't move, but at least I could feel my hands and feet again. The tent flap was roughly torn open. A greasy, effeminate officer strode in, flanked by 2 soldiers. He wrinkled his nose at the bloodstains on the ground and the mangled piece of flesh, then fixed his gaze on me. So you're the one who bit off Zhong Wang's ear? I opened my eyes, my gaze cold as ice. It was him, Wang Laoliu. The company commander. He'd made a habit of embezzling the grain and pay of Mu Nanji's troops, and she'd once publicly flogged him for it. I didn't answer, just stared at him silently. Wang Laoliu shifted uncomfortably under my gaze, then flew into a rage. You whore, how dare you act so arrogant? Drag her out and beat her to death. #4, beat me to death. I laughed suddenly, my voice soft but sharp enough to halt the 2 soldiers advancing toward me. Company Commander Wang. Are you certain you want to kill me? Wang Laoliu froze. A crippled camp prostitute, what's stopping me? My death is trivial, I said slowly, my tone calm and deliberate. But Mu Nanji's case of colluding with the enemy will become a closed case with no witnesses. When the emperor investigates and finds out the only witness was killed by you, do you think your head will still be attached to your neck? I was gambling that he had no idea I was just a discarded plaything. Not some key witness. To low-ranking officers like him, the power struggles of the capital were like gods fighting. One wrong step, and they'd be crushed to dust. Sure enough, Wang Laoliu's face turned pale. What nonsense are you spouting? You're nothing but a prose. Whether I'm a prostitute is irrelevant. I cut him off. What matters is that in the eyes of those high-ranking officials above, I am General Mu Nanji. As long as I'm alive, this case can continue to be investigated. If I die, and anything goes wrong, the first person to take the fall will be the one who killed me. I locked eyes with him. Do you want to be that scapegoat? Cold sweat broke out on Wang Laoliu's forehead. He was just a small-time company commander. Bullying the weak was his forte, but tangling with a royal case, not even 10 of him would dare. He waved a hand, ordering the soldiers back. Stop spouting these evil lies. I'm sparing your life out of pity, I scoffed, since that's the case. I pressed my advantage. Get me a doctor and some good medicine. Give me a clean tent, and 3 meals a day, good wine and meat, if this body collapses, or if I starve to death. Company Commander Wang, what do you think the higher-ups will say? You, Wang Laoliu trembled with rage. A prisoner dares to make demands. You can refuse, I said, closing my eyes and feigning indifference. I've got nothing but a worthless life to lose. taking a company commander down with me. I won't be lonely on the road to the underworld. Silence descended over the tent. He was weighing his options, consumed by fear. For bullies like him, the harder you push back, the more they cower. After what felt like an eternity, he ground out a few words through gritted teeth. Fine, you win. He stormed out of the tent, his sleeves flailing in anger. I knew I was safe, for now, using Munanji's identity. I'd scared off a man who'd wanted her dead. This was going to be fun, soon. I was moved to a small, separate tent. Simple as it was at least clean. A military doctor examined my wounds tremblingly and left behind his finest golden sore medicine. Hot meals and a small jug of wine arrived shortly after. I ate and drank without hesitation. Restoring this body with demonic power required immense energy, and this mortal flesh was starving. My tendons healed faster than I'd anticipated. By the next day, I could move my fingers slightly. The foot tendons recovered more slowly, but I could feel strength gradually returning. As I healed, I sorted through Munanji's memories. Deputy General Xianxia. That name stuck like a poisoned thorn in Munanji's soul. He'd been an old subordinate of Munanji's father. She'd treated him like an elder brother, consulting him on nearly all military affairs. He'd even known every detail of her personal guard's deployment, which was why he'd so easily obtained her private seal and forged that fatal letter. Why, Munanji had never understood, but to me, it was simple: jealousy or the lure of greater power and profit. I was deep in thought when the tent flap was lifted. A tall, square-jawed man strode in, clad in silver armor. It was none other than Deputy General Xianxia. Seeing me sitting there unharmed, a flicker of surprise crossed his eyes, quickly replaced by intense disgust and contempt. "You're surprisingly lucky to be alive," he said slowly. I ignored him, using my still weak fingers to wipe the corners of my mouth leisurely. My indifference infuriated him. He took a step forward, towering over me. "Munanji, do you know your crimes?" "Crimes?" I looked up and smiled. "Deputy General Li, what crimes have I committed?" Still refusing to admit defeat even at death's door, he snorted coldly. "You colluded with the enemy, proof is irrefutable. The Emperor showed you great mercy by not having you Ling Kai executed." "Oh, irrefutable proof." I tilted my head, eyeing him like a cat sizing up a mouse. "Which piece of proof are you referring to, Deputy General? The one you forged in my handwriting, or the second letter you've hidden away?" "Not yet submitted to the court." A crack appeared in Xianxia's composure. "Spreading nonsense. It seems this camp prostitute life has driven you mad," he shouted sharply, trying to cover his guilty conscience. "You know better than anyone if I'm mad." I licked my lips, deliberately making the gesture seductive and eerie. "Xianxia, can you sleep at night? Do you dream of my father? He treated you like his own son once." "Shut up." Xianxia flew into a rage, like a dog whose tail had been stepped on. "You're not worthy to mention the old general." "Not worthy? Then are you, a traitorous scoundrel who framed his commander?" "Worthy?" I laughed harder. "Do you really think reducing me to this will let you sleep soundly and take my place? How naive." I stared at his ashen face and slowly dropped the final bombshell. "You're not the only one who knows what you've done, Xianxia. Your days of prosperity are over." With that, I closed my eyes and ignored him. I knew he didn't dare kill me here. If Wang Laoliu didn't dare, Xianxia, with far more to lose, certainly wouldn't. Until the case was fully closed, my life was more valuable than his. Xianxia glared at me, his eyes shifting unpredictably. In the end, he said nothing, turned on his heel, and strode away. I could feel his murderous intent mingled with fear. Perfect. The seed of fear had been planted. Now, I just needed to let it take root and grow. I needed an ally, someone to run errands and deliver messages for me. My gaze fell on the young soldier who brought me meals every day. His name was Chen Jiang, a new recruit, timid and cowardly. He looked at me with a mix of fear and sympathy every time. That day, as he set down the food, I called out to him. "Do you want to leave this hellhole?" I asked. Chen Jiang jumped, nearly dropping the food box. "General, miss, don't scare me." I'm not scaring you." My voice took on a hint of enchantment. "Do a few things for me, and I promise not only will I get you out of the military camp, But I'll give you enough gold to last a lifetime." He stared at me, skeptical and uncertain. I smiled, lowering my voice. "Li Huqi is looking for someone to take the blame for his crimes. Do you think a powerless soldier like you would make the perfect scapegoat?" Chen Jiang's face turned deathly pale. Chen Jiang became my pawn. It was a simple choice. His timidity meant he was easy to control. His cowardice meant he craved a way to change his fate. A vague threat combined with a promise of immense wealth was enough to make him risk everything for me. My first order was for him to spread rumors. "Go tell everyone this." I leaned in and whispered instructions. "Li Huqi runs a strict army. He's discovered someone forged the general's handwriting to frame her. He's secretly investigating, vowing to find the mastermind and clear the general's name." Chen Jiang gaped. "But wasn't it Deputy General Li who accused the general?" "Fool," I snapped. "That's exactly why we're saying this. Just spread the word, make sure it reaches as many people as possible." Chen Jiang nodded, half understanding, and scurried off. My goal was to drive a wedge between him and his accomplices. Framing Mu Nanji had been a conspiracy. This rumor would make his allies suspect if Li Huqi planned to throw them under the bus as scapegoats. When no one could tell truth from lies, the real truth would have a chance to surface. In the days that followed, the military camp buzzed with hidden tensions. Rumors spread like wildfire, in countless versions. Some said Li Huqi was loyal and upright. Others claimed he was the real mastermind. Some even whispered that Mu Nanji had never colluded with the enemy, that someone in the imperial court wanted her dead. Li Huqi was overwhelmed by the rumors. The harder he tried to suppress them, the faster they spread. He began holding frequent meetings with his confidants, his anxiety plain for all to see. Meanwhile, I focused on healing in my tent. With ample food and the boost of demonic power, my body recovered at an astonishing speed. My hand tendons were fully healed. I couldn't perform delicate tasks yet, but I could clench my fists without pain. My foot tendons were mostly mended too. I could barely stand with support. Every day, I forced myself to stand and practice walking, from stumbling unsteadily to shuffling awkwardly. Each step was accompanied by excruciating, tearing pain. I needed to regain my strength as soon as possible, because I knew the real storm was coming soon. Sure enough, that evening, Chen Jiang burst in, his face ashen. "It's bad. Someone's come from the capital. It's His Highness, the Seventh Prince." The Seventh Prince, Xiao Jiyun. Mu Nanji's memories held traces of him. A gentle, refined man with unfathomable depths. His mother had died when he was young, and he had no power in the court. He was the most inconspicuous among all the princes. But he'd met Mu Nanji several times. Mu Nanji had once described him as possessing the demeanor of a gentleman and the ambition to slay dragons. Why was he here? For me, this was a golden opportunity. The person I needed to see wasn't Li Huqi, nor the military inspectors, but someone who could speak directly to the emperor. "Where is he now?" I asked calmly. "In the central army tent, Deputy General Li." "No, his General Li now, he's receiving him." Chen Jiang stammered. "General Li, heh." It seemed he'd already taken Mu Nanji's position. "I'm going to see the Seventh Prince." My eyes sparkled with excitement, like a cat about to pounce on its prey. What's a play without an audience? I changed into a relatively clean prisoner's uniform and had Chen Jiang tie my hair up simply. Though pale and emaciated, the unyielding pride of a female general was evident in my deliberate demeanor. "Let's go." I leaned on Chen Jiang's shoulder and walked slowly but firmly toward the central army tent. With each step, my foot tendons screamed as if tearing apart, but I held my head high, showing no sign of pain. The central army tent was heavily guarded. When they saw me, the guards immediately stepped forward to block my path. I ignored them, summoning all my strength to shout loudly. "Criminal General Mu Nanji requests an audience with His Highness, the Seventh Prince." My voice wasn't loud, but it carried with remarkable penetration, enough for everyone inside the tent to hear clearly. The guards' faces turned ashen, and they moved to gag me. Just then, a clear, melodious voice came from inside the tent. "Let her in." I entered the central army tent. Seated on the main seat was a young man in a brocade robe. With handsome features and a gentle temperament, none other than the Seventh Prince, Xiao Jiyun. Beside him sat Lihachi, his face a mix of shock and gloom. Several other generals were present, all former subordinates of Munanji. At that moment, they looked at me with complex expressions: surprise, sympathy, and avoidance. I let go of Chen Jiang and limped forward alone, step by step, to the center of the tent. Instead of kneeling, I merely bowed slightly. Criminal General Mu Nanji pays homage to His Highness, the Seventh Prince. Xiao Jiyun's gaze fell on me, filled with curiosity. He didn't speak immediately. And the atmosphere in the tent was oppressively tense. General Mu, do you know that you are no longer a general, but a convicted criminal? I do. I met his eyes directly. But even a criminal general is still a general. Once a general, always a defender of the border. The Mu family has shed blood for this country and killed enemies for His Majesty. This pride of ours has never been broken. Lihachi shouted angrily. Insolent, how dare you speak so recklessly in front of the Seventh Prince? I turned to him and smiled. General Li, are you afraid of what I might say? Nonsense. I ignored him and turned back to Xiao Jiyun. Your Highness, I accuse Lihachi of 3 heinous crimes. Gasps erupted around the tent. A glint of interest flashed in Xiao Jiyun's eyes. Oh, speak. First crime, framing his commander. He forged letters between me and the enemy, intending to have me executed. Second crime, colluding with the enemy and betraying the country. He secretly traded with enemy troops, selling our army's grain supply routes, repeatedly putting our soldiers in mortal danger. That so-called proof is nothing but a ruse to frame me and cover up his own crimes. Third crime, treason and usurpation. He reduced me to this state to seize military power, colluding with a powerful figure in the capital to plot rebellion. My words grew more shocking with each sentence. Striking at the heart of the matter, Lihachi trembled with rage, pointing at me and shouting, "You're spitting lies, Your Highness, she's gone mad, completely mad." I let out a cold laugh. Mad or not, an investigation will tell. If Your Highness doubts my words, send someone at once to check our army's grain supply records from last month. Compare them with Lihachi's correspondence with the capital, and see which high-ranking figure he's been colluding with. This was a gamble that Lihachi's hands were far from clean, that the person pulling his strings in the capital had powerful enemies of their own. If Xiao Jiyun wanted to investigate, he would find clues of that, I was certain. Xiao Jiyun remained silent, listening quietly all the while. His fingers tapped lightly on the table, making a dull, rhythmic sound. After a long pause, he turned to Lihachi, his voice calm and even. General Li, what do you have to say about the general's accusations? Lihachi dropped to his knees with a thud, cold sweat streaming down his forehead. Your Highness, please see the truth. This woman is spreading malicious lies to stir up mutiny in the army. My loyalty to the court is unshakable, heaven and earth can bear witness. I watched his clumsy performance, sneering inwardly. Just then, Xiao Jiyun's gaze returned to me, his eyes dark and profound. You claim you have evidence. The evidence is hidden in Lihachi's commander's tent, I stated firmly. The letters between him and his accomplices in the capital are still tucked away somewhere. He dares not destroy them, they are his lucky charm, and his death warrant. The tent fell into a deathly hush. Every eye in the room locked onto the space between Lihachi and me. Lihachi's face was no longer just pale, it was ashen, drained of all color. He knew, Xiao Jiyun's suspicions had been aroused. Once a prince began to doubt, things would never be easily swept under the rug again. Search. Xiao Jiyun spoke a single word, his tone final. 2 guards behind him immediately obeyed, stepping forward to seize Lihachi. His legs gave way, and he collapsed to the ground, muttering over and over, "I'm innocent, I'm being wronged." Xiao Jiyun turned his gaze back to me, his expression unreadable. General Mu, you have suffered greatly. I will send men to escort you back to the capital. I will personally present your case to my father, the Emperor. I swear to you, justice will be served. He called me General Mu. I knew I had won the gamble. I bowed slightly. Thank you, Your Highness. That very day, under the escort of a detachment of royal guards, I left that hellish military camp behind. The carriage was spacious, lined with soft blankets. Inside were healing ointments and clean clothes. I leaned against the carriage wall, closing my eyes to rest. All the while channeling my demonic power to mend my body further, replaying the events of the past hours in my mind. I did not fully trust Xiaojiyun. No one in the imperial family was simple. The ease with which he'd believed me, the speed with which he'd arranged my return to the capital, he undoubtedly had his own agenda. Perhaps the man behind Li Hachi was a political rival of his, and he intended to use Mu Nanji's case as a weapon to strike at his enemies, but that did not matter. The enemy of my enemy was, for the time being, my ally. I needed him as a springboard to escape the camp, to return to the capital. There lay the true eye of the storm. There, more people who had wronged Mu Nanji awaited me. Halfway to the capital, the captain of the royal guards approached the carriage to report, "Your Highness, we have found the secret letters in Li Hachi's tent. He has been in frequent contact with Wang Dequan, the Minister of War." The letters repeatedly mention phrases such as eliminating the Mu clan and seizing control of the northern border military power. A low chuckle came from inside the carriage. "Wang Dequan, so it's him. It seems my trip north was well worth it." I smiled too. Hidden behind the carriage curtain, Wang Dequan, the Minister of War. Mu Nanji's memories of him were clear. He had been the most vocal in impeaching her in the imperial court, so they were all birds of a feather. After all, Li Hachi. Wang Dequan, I committed each name to memory. Wait for me. I will come for you soon. Upon returning to the capital, I was not thrown into the imperial prison. Instead, I was taken directly to the residence of the seventh prince, Xiaojiyun. Officially, I was there to recuperate from my wounds. In truth, I was under house arrest. Xiaojiyun assigned me a quiet courtyard, sent the best physicians in the capital to treat me, and provided me with the finest food and wine every day. Except for the fact that I was forbidden to step outside the prince's mansion, my treatment was 1,000 times better than it had been in the camp. My body recovered at a rapid pace. Within 10 days, my hands and feet were fully functional. I still could not engage in strenuous exercise, but walking and even running were no longer a problem. The transformative power of 1,000 years of demonic cultivation on a mortal body was truly extraordinary. During this time, Xiaojiyun visited me twice. He always wore a gentle smile, chatting with me about poetry and literature, as if I were not a prisoner who had just clawed her way back from the brink of death, but an old friend with whom he could exchange idle pleasantries. He never once mentioned the case, nor did he ask me any details about the military. I knew he was testing me, observing me. "General Mu's eyes are not the same as before," he said suddenly during one of our conversations. I was watering a pot of orchids at the time. My hand paused for a moment, then I smiled. "One who has walked through the gates of hell will naturally see the world differently." "Is that so?" He walked over to stand beside me, looking into my eyes. "I, however, think that in your eyes, there is less of a human's obsession, and more of a beast's wildness." My heart skipped a beat. This Xiaojiyun was far more perceptive than I had anticipated. I did not avert my gaze. Instead, I held his stare steadily. "Does your highness think it is better to be human, or a beast?" He blinked, taken aback. I set down the watering can, my voice slow and deliberate. "Humans have 7 emotions and 6 desires, weaknesses, attachments. That is why they suffer, why they betray. Beasts, on the other hand, follow only their most primal instincts. When hungry, they eat. When tired, they sleep. Whoever harms them, they tear apart with their sharpest claws and fangs. Which, do you think, lives a more unburdened life?" Xiaojiyun fell silent. After a long while, he sighed. "The general speaks the truth." He turned and walked away, his back carrying a complex emotion I could not quite decipher. I knew my words had aroused his suspicions, but that was fine. I wanted him to doubt me. A Mu Nanji who was completely transparent to him would be of no value. A Mu Nanji who was mysterious, powerful, even a little dangerous, that was a woman worth allying himself with. That night, under the cover of darkness, I slipped out of my courtyard as silently as a shadow. The guards at the prince's mansion were nothing more than a flimsy barrier to me. I needed to find out just how vast was the net that had been cast to frame Mu Nanji. The capital's night was far more bustling than I had imagined. I evaded the patrolling guards, moving swiftly across the rows of tightly packed rooftops. A cat's night vision and agility made me as comfortable in the darkness as a fish in water. My first target was the residence of Wang Dequan, the Minister of War. The Wang mansion was heavily guarded, but I easily found a blind spot in their defenses. I landed soundlessly on the beam above his study, suppressing all traces of my aura. Inside the study, Wang Dequan was in a heated private conversation with a middle-aged man dressed in luxurious silk robes. That useless fool Lihachi, how could he be caught so easily? Wang Dequan growled, his voice thick with anger. Minister Wang, there is no need to panic, the man in silk said, sipping his tea slowly. Lihachi is a tight-lipped man. He knows that if he talks, he dies. If he stays silent, his family lives. He will not dare to say a word. But that bitch Mu Nanji has been brought back to the capital by the seventh prince. That is the greatest variable of all. A woman with severed tendons, what harm can she do even if she returns? The man in silk scoffed. She is nothing more than a pawn in the seventh prince's hand now. The one we truly need to worry about is the prince himself. By bringing Mu Nanji back, he clearly intends to use this case against us. Wang Dequan's face turned grave. What should we do, then? What of Her Majesty the Empress? The Empress? I froze on the beam, my heart jolting in surprise. So the net was even wider than I had thought. Lihachi and Wang Dequan were merely pawns cast aside by the Empress. Her Majesty's orders are to wait and see, the man in silk said, setting down his teacup. However, we can create some trouble for the seventh prince. Mu Nanji must never be allowed to speak again. A ruthless glint of murder flashed in his eyes. Send men to the seventh prince's mansion, make it clean. A dead woman has no value left. Wang Dequan nodded. I understand. I listened quietly, a cold smile tugging at my lips. Want me to keep quiet? Not in this lifetime. I did not disturb them. Slipping away from the Wang mansion as silently as I had come, I did not return to the seventh prince's residence. Instead, I headed for the capital's most chaotic black market. Here, with enough money, any information could be bought. I traded a jade pendant I had taken from the Wang mansion's study for all the information available on the Empress, her maternal clan, and the Song family of the Grand Chancellor. As I read through the intelligence in my hands, I finally understood the full story behind the conspiracy. Mu Nanji commanded 300,000 troops on the northern border, her military achievements unmatched, her prestige among the soldiers was unparalleled, and the Emperor's trust in her grew with each passing day. This had threatened the Empress's core interests. The Empress hailed from the powerful Song clan. Grand Chancellor Song Lian was her own elder brother. The Song family held immense power in the imperial court, and had long coveted control over the military. Mu Nanji's existence was their greatest obstacle, and so, they had devised this vicious scheme. First, they had ordered Wang Dequan and Lihachi to join forces, framing Mu Nanji for colluding with the enemy to bring her down. Then, they had used the Song family's influence in the court to fan the flames, ensuring that Mu Nanji would never be able to clear her name. Once Mu Nanji was dead, the military power of the northern border would naturally fall into the hands of the man they had chosen, a brilliant two-pronged plan. Unfortunately for them, they had miscalculated one thing. The soul now inhabiting Mu Nanji's body was that of a cat demon who had lived for 1,000 years. I licked my claws, or rather, my fingers. #13, I slipped back into the seventh prince's mansion as quietly as I'd left, as if I'd never been gone at all. That night, 3 assassins clad in black sneaked into my courtyard undetected. Their movements were sleek and agile, they were clearly seasoned killers. I feigned deep sleep, lying motionless on the bed. Just as their blades were about to pierce my neck, I snapped my eyes open. There was no fear in my gaze, only the playful cruelty of a cat toying with mice, before their stunned eyes. My body twisted at an impossible angle and shot upright. My nails lengthened in an instant, sharp as daggers. Fut, 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 asterisk. 3 soft sounds rang out almost simultaneously. Fresh blood splattered across my face. I stuck out my tongue and licked a drop from the corner of my mouth. It tasted surprisingly good. The 3 assassins clutched their throats, staring at me in disbelief before collapsing silently to the ground. Their windpipes had all been sliced clean through with pinpoint precision. I left the bodies where they lay and stepped outside, standing in the courtyard and waiting calmly. It wasn't long before Xiao Jiyun arrived with a large contingent of guards. When he saw the 3 corpses, and me, standing beside them covered in blood, my expression eerily serene, his pupils constricted sharply. "What is the meaning of this?" "A greeting from Her Majesty the Empress," I said lightly. As if discussing something trivial, I pointed to a token hanging from one assassin's waist. "These are the Song family's personal death squads. I'm sure Your Highness recognizes the mark." Xiao Jiyun's face turned grave. He waved for his guards to dispose of the bodies, then fixed me with a deep, searching look. "How did you do this?" He wasn't asking how I knew who'd sent them. He was asking how I'd killed 3 top-tier assassins alone. "Without a sound, I told you." I wiped the blood from my face and gave him a bright smile. "A beast cornered will bear its sharpest claws and fangs. Now, Your Highness, do you believe I'm worthy of being your ally?" Xiao Jiyun fell silent. As he looked at me, for the first time, I saw a flicker of wariness in his eyes. "What do you want?" he asked. "I want Wang Dequan dead. I want the Song clan destroyed. I want the Empress thrown off her throne. No one who wronged Mu Nanji will escape my vengeance." "And what do I get in return?" Xiao Jiyun cut straight to the chase. "A court free of the Song family's meddling, the entire northern border army at your command, and a clear path to the imperial throne." He stepped back abruptly, staring at me in shock. "Your ambition is staggering." I laughed. "Your Highness, my ambitions are far greater than you can imagine. Now, will you take this deal, or not?" #14. Xiao Jiyun agreed to my terms. A Mu Nanji who could slaughter the Song family's death squads with ease and dared to covet the throne was either the most powerful ally he could hope for, or the deadliest enemy he could face. Our alliance was sealed that bloody night. My first target, Wang Dequan, Minister of War, after Li Huchi was escorted back to the capital. He was thrown into the imperial prison. Xiao Jiyun, citing the need to reopen Mu Nanji's case, personally interrogated him. On my advice, Xiao Jiyun didn't resort to torture. Instead, he had Li Huchi's entire family, dressed in their finest silks, fat and complacent, invited to the cell next door. The very next day, Li Huchi spilled everything. Not only did he confess how Wang Dequan had ordered him to frame Mu Nanji, he also handed over a secret ledger. It meticulously recorded every detail of Wang Dequan's crimes over the years: embezzling military funds, selling weapons on the black market, lining his own pockets with soldiers' blood and sweat. With the evidence irrefutable, the emperor flew into a rage. He immediately ordered Wang Dequan stripped of his rank, arrested, and his home ransacked. But I wanted more than just his downfall. I wanted his life. The night Wang Dequan was locked away, I snuck out of the 7th Prince's mansion once again. The imperial prison was no more a fortress to me than the prince's mansion had been. I evaded all the guards and found Wang Dequan's cell. At the sound of my footsteps, he looked up. When he saw me, his murky eyes filled with instant terror. "Mu Nanji, why are you here?" "I've come to send you off, Minister Wang," I said with a smile, like a respectful junior visiting an old friend. "Stay away from me." "Help! Guards, someone help me." He shrank back in terror, screaming at the top of his lungs, but I'd already woven a thin layer of demonic energy around the cell. His cries couldn't penetrate it, no one would hear him. I stepped closer, knelt down, and stared at his terrified face. "Minister Wang, when you stood in the imperial court, righteous and indignant, denouncing me as deserving of death, did you ever imagine this day would come? It wasn't me, it was the Empress, the Grand Chancellor. They forced me to do it." He broke down in tears, begging for mercy. "General, no, merciful goddess, spare me. I'll never do it again, I swear." "It's too late for that. When you embezzled the soldiers' pay, when you drained their blood for your own gain, did you ever think to spare them?" His body trembled violently, and a foul stench spread from his trousers. I frowned in disgust, with a flick of my sharpened nails. His head rolled off his shoulders and hit the ground with a thud. Fresh blood soaked the dirty straw on the cell floor. I stood up, didn't spare the headless corpse another glance, and vanished into the darkness. The next day, news spread throughout the capital like wildfire. Wang Dequan, former Minister of War, had committed suicide in his prison cell out of guilt. Next on my list, Grand Chancellor Song Lian, #15, Wang Dequan's suicide sent shockwaves through the imperial court. Everyone knew something was amiss, but with the emperor ordering a gag on all discussion, no one dared to speak of it openly. The faction loyal to the empress and Grand Chancellor Song Lian kept a low profile for the time being. And I, under Xiao Jiyun's arrangement, continued to reside in the prince's mansion to recuperate from my injuries. My status was a delicate one. The emperor had not issued an edict to pardon me, nor had he renewed my sentence. I was like a pawn hanging in the balance, a source of unease for everyone in the court, which was exactly the effect I wanted. Soon enough, the perfect opportunity presented itself. Grand Chancellor Song Lian was celebrating his 60th birthday. Hosting a grand banquet at his mansion, virtually every important figure in the capital attended. The emperor even personally bestowed a plaque in his honor, a rare and immense privilege. That night, an unremarkable carriage stopped at the back gate of the Song mansion. I changed into a sleek night suit and slipped inside like a ghost. The Song mansion was several times larger than Wang Dequan's residence, and its defenses were far more rigorous. But my power had grown by leaps and bounds since my days in the military camp. My demonic energy had fully merged with Munanji's warrior body, pushing my speed, strength, and senses to terrifying new heights. I evaded all the visible and hidden sentries with ease. Heading straight for the Song family's treasure vault, Song Lian was an insatiably greedy man. All the wealth he'd plundered from the people over the years, jewels, antiques, gold and silver, was stored here. I didn't touch a single piece of the treasure. Instead, I placed something in the deepest, most hidden corner of the vault. It was another gift Li Hachi had given me, along with the secret ledger, a royal token from the enemy kingdom on the northern border, a proof of their dealings, left behind by the enemy when Li Hachi had colluded with them. I carefully hid it beneath a chest overflowing with gold ingots. Once I'd finished, I didn't leave. Instead, I headed for the banquet hall. I climbed silently onto the highest beam in the hall and watched with amusement as the hypocrites below drank and laughed, feasting and enjoying the music and dance. Beasts in fine clothing, all of them. Song Lian sat on the main seat, his face flushed with wine, basking in the endless flattery of his guests. The empress had even sent a lavish gift, cementing his status as the most powerful man in the court besides the emperor himself. As I watched, I suddenly grew bored. So I pulled something out of my pocket, a tiny fire starter. I lit it, then casually tossed it into a row of hanging lanterns. When I was done, I grinned. Happy 60th birthday, Chancellor Song. May you live a long and memorable life. #16. The fire started with the lanterns in the banquet hall. The guests screamed in panic, scrambling to escape in all directions. The entire Song mansion descended into chaos in an instant. The flames spread rapidly, painting half the night sky red. Shouts of fire, fire, mingled with women's cries and men's curses, a beautiful, chaotic symphony to my ears. I needed a catalyst to draw everyone's attention to that token, and right on cue, Xiao Jiyun's men made their move. Sure enough, it wasn't long before a detachment of imperial guards rushed into the Song mansion, ostensibly to help put out the fire and maintain order. Leading them was General Chen, Xiao Jiyun's most trusted confidant and the commander of the imperial guards. As General Chen directed his men to fight the blaze, he casually led a group toward the direction of the treasure vault. The Chancellor's treasure vault is a critical stronghold. We can't let it fall to the flames. Hurry, protect the vault. His shout cut through the chaos, making everyone in the vicinity glance instinctively toward the vault, including the palace eunuch the emperor had sent as his representative. Soon after, the vault door was strugglingly forced open. To rescue the valuables inside, chest after chest of gold, silver, and jewels were carried out. Just then, a soldier accidentally tripped and dropped one of the chests. A cascade of glittering gold ingots spilled across the ground, and amidst that dazzling pile of treasure, a black token carved with strange, intricate patterns stood out like a sore thumb. The palace eunuch's eyes widened instantly. He hurried forward, picked up the token, and his face turned ashen. This is the royal token of the Northern Di tribe." The words hung in the air, and the entire scene fell deathly silent. Everyone turned to stare in horror at Song Lian, who had collapsed to the ground in shock. Song Lian couldn't defend himself even if he tried. He was just as stunned as everyone else. He had no idea where the token had come from. He screamed in terror, "It's not mine, it's a frame-up. Someone is trying to destroy me." But who would believe him? The token had been found in his treasure vault, hidden beneath his most prized cache of gold. If it wasn't his, had it grown legs and walked there on its own? I looked down at his desperate, twisted face and smiled wider and wider. "Song Lian, it's over for you." With that, I turned and vanished into the night once more. What a spectacular show tonight. Time for me to head back and get a good night's sleep. #17. The discovery of the enemy token in the Chancellor's mansion was like dropping a bomb on the capital. The Emperor flew into a rage, ordering Song Lian to be thrown into the imperial prison on the spot and demanding a full investigation into the entire Song clan. In the blink of an eye, everyone turned against the fallen house. Officials who had once groveled at the Song family's feet scrambled to betray them, exposing a litany of their crimes: embezzlement, selling official positions, wanton murder, each offense more horrifying than the last. The sprawling, deeply rooted Song clan collapsed completely in an instant, and the mastermind behind it all pointed directly to the mistress of the harem, the Empress. Though the Emperor did not depose her immediately, he ordered her confined to the cunning palace and confiscated her imperial seal. Everyone knew it was only a matter of time before she fell from grace. When Xiao Jiyun came to see me, his face was alight with barely contained excitement. "General Mu, that move of yours was brilliant." I was in the courtyard, trimming my nails with a small knife. I didn't look up. This is just the beginning. My target was far bigger than a mere chancellor, with the Empress confined and the Song clan destroyed. "Most of the court's corrupt forces have been purged. What's your next step?" Xiao Jiyun asked. "We wait," I said, blowing the nail clippings off my fingers. "We wait for the Emperor to come to me." Xiao Jiyun looked confused. I smiled. "The Emperor is by nature suspicious. He is certainly pleased that the Song clan has fallen, but at the same time, he will be afraid. He will fear that we, who brought down the Song family, will become the new Song clan, especially me." A female general who had risen from the dead and shaken the entire court to its core. In the Emperor's eyes, I was far more terrifying than the Song family had ever been. "He will come to see me, to test me, to win me over, or to kill me," I said, locking eyes with Xiao Jiyun, "and that will be our final chance." Sure enough, 3 days later, a secret imperial edict arrived at the 7th prince's mansion. The Emperor wanted to see me alone. The meeting place, the imperial study. Xiao Jiyun looked tense. "This is a feast of Hongmen, a trap. Father is ruthless. Your going there is extremely dangerous." "I know," I said, standing up and straightening my robes. I had had a new set of Mu Nanji's general's uniform made, and I wore it now. "But if I don't go, everything we've worked for will be for nothing." I looked at him, my gaze calm. "Your Highness, ready your men. If I do not emerge from the palace by midnight." I paused, then grinned, revealing a row of sharp white teeth. "Then storm the gates." #18. The imperial study. The censer burned with fine dragon saliva incense. The Emperor sat on the dragon throne, staring at me expressionlessly. He looked older than in Mu Nanji's memories, but his eyes still held the imperial majesty and suspicion of a ruler. I did not kneel, but bowed slightly. "Mu Nanji greets your majesty. Raise your head." The Emperor's voice was deep and resonant. I lifted my head and met his gaze directly. "I hear you suffered greatly in the military camp," he said. "To serve your majesty, I would gladly die 1,000 deaths." I replied, my face betraying no emotion. 1,000 deaths. Indeed, the Emperor sneered. "Li Huqi and Wang Dequan have both confessed. They framed you. I was mistaken about you." Though he spoke of his mistake, there was not a hint of apology in his voice. "I can restore all your official titles, reward you with 10,000 taels of gold and 1,000 mu of fertile land. From this day forth, you shall once again be my general who defends the realm." He laid out his terms. I smiled. "Thank you for your great kindness, your majesty." However, I have one question I would like to ask. Speak. The crime I was framed for was colluding with the enemy. Now it has been proven that the true traitor was Chancellor Song Lian. So what punishment does Her Majesty the Empress, who colluded with Song Lian from within the palace, deserve? I cut straight to the point. Turning my spearhead directly at the Empress face darkened instantly. Presumptuous. The Empress's affairs are not for you to meddle in. I dare not. I bowed my head. But the 300,000 soldiers of the northern border cannot be branded as traitors unjustly. The entire Mu clan has been loyal to the state for generations. They do not deserve to be wrongfully accused. Today, if your Majesty cannot give me an explanation, cannot give the people of the realm an explanation, I will die with regret. My voice was firm and powerful, echoing through the empty imperial study. The Emperor stared at me fiercely, killing intent flashing in his eyes. I knew I was forcing his hand, forcing him to choose between me, his loyal hero, and his Empress, Mu Nanji, he said, each word dripping with ice. Are you threatening me? I dare not. I raised my head again, my gaze colder than his. I am merely seeking justice. A terrible silence descended over the hall. I could sense several imperial experts lying in ambush behind the screen. At the Emperor's command, they would rush out and tear me to pieces. But I felt no fear at all. I was gambling that the Emperor did not dare to kill me now. Killing me would brand him as a tyrant in the eyes of the world, and the hearts of all soldiers in the realm would turn cold. He had just uprooted the Song clan. His foundations were still unstable. He did not dare to take that risk. After a long while, the Emperor closed his eyes, as if he had exhausted all his strength. By my imperial decree, he waved his hand wearily. Empress Song, for her lack of virtue and framing of loyal ministers, is hereby deposed from her position. She shall be confined to the cold palace and given a white silk ribbon to end her life. Your Majesty is wise. I bowed deeply. Just as I thought everything was over, the Emperor suddenly opened his eyes again. He looked at me and asked a question that took me completely by surprise. Mu Nanji, let me ask you this. Did you set the fire at the Chancellor's mansion? #19. My heart sank sharply. But my face remained calm and impassive. Why would your Majesty say such a thing? I have been recuperating at the 7th Prince's mansion this entire time, never setting foot outside its gates. Is that so? A strange smile tugged at the corner of the Emperor's lips. Do you think my hidden guards are incompetent fools? You killed the Song family's assassins, infiltrated Wang Dequan's mansion at night, set fire to the Chancellor's residence. I know everything you have done. He stood up and walked toward me step by step. A powerful sense of oppression washed over me. This old emperor, he was actually a master of martial arts, hiding his strength in plain sight. You are not Mu Nanji. He stopped in front of me and stared into my eyes intently. Though Mu Nanji was unruly, she was loyal to the bone. She would never have such ruthless methods, nor would she have eyes that regard human life as worthless grass. Speak, who are you really? He thundered, releasing the full weight of his imperial aura without restraint. Any ordinary mortal would have been brought to their knees begging for mercy under that pressure. Unfortunately for him, I was no ordinary mortal. Now that I had been exposed, there was no need to pretend anymore. I licked my lips, curling them into a seductive, cruel smile. Who am I? Heh. I am here to collect a debt from you, Your Majesty. My voice was no longer Mu Nanji's clear and cold tone. It had become sharp, eerie, and infused with an otherworldly charm. The Emperor's pupils constricted violently. A monster, a demon, bingo. Too bad there's no prize for the correct answer. I stopped hiding the demonic energy within me. Black demonic chi surged out from my body, coiling around me like a mist. My eyes, in the dim light, transformed into vertical slits, glowing with an eerie green light. What do you want? The Emperor stumbled back in terror, though he was highly skilled in martial arts and surrounded by experts. In the face of a true demon, that mortal cultivation was utterly worthless. What do I want? I advanced toward him step by step. And he retreated step by step until his back pressed against the cold surface of the dragon throne. I reached out a finger and traced the carved dragon patterns on the armrest lightly. I have avenged Mu Nanji. I have shaken your imperial court to its core. And now, I turned my head and grinned at him. I want to sit on your throne, I want to play with your kingdom. What do you think about that, old emperor? #20. Guards, protect the emperor, protect the emperor. The emperor finally snapped out of his terror and let out a hysterical scream. From behind the screen and atop the beams, several black shadows darted out like lightning. More than a dozen imperial experts attacked me from all directions. A flurry of sword and blade lights surrounded me in an instant. About time. I laughed with excitement. It had been far too long since I'd had a chance to stretch my muscles, just as those blades were about to pierce my body. The black chi around me erupted suddenly, forming a spherical shield. Clang, 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 all the weapons were sent flying away. The experts were thrown back by the powerful counterforce, their chi churning violently in their chests. Pathetic fools, my figure blurred, leaving an afterimage in place. The next moment, I appeared behind one of the experts. My nails had transformed into 3-inch-long claws, gleaming with a dark luster. Squish, my claws pierced his heart effortlessly. I did not linger, moving through the imperial study like a ghost. Every time I flickered, a scream rang out and a cloud of blood burst forth. To my vertical demon eyes, those experts, who were considered lightning fast by mortal standards, moved as slowly as if they were taking a leisurely stroll. Their vital points, their weaknesses, I saw them all with perfect clarity. Less than 10 heartbeats later, silence returned to the imperial study. More than a dozen bodies lay scattered across the floor, blood pooling into rivers around them, and I still stood in the center of the room, not a single speck of dust on my robes. The emperor collapsed onto the dragon throne, his face ashen, his entire body shaking like a leaf in the wind. He stared at me as if I were a demon god risen from the depths of hell. I walked up the steps slowly, stopping right in front of him. Now, I said, smiling gently, no one will disturb us anymore. You can't kill me. I am the son of heaven, he babbled incoherently. Son of heaven, I tilted my head. To me, you are no different from a fat, plump rat. I reached out and grabbed him by the neck, lifting him off the dragon throne with one hand. His feet kicked wildly in the air, his face turning purple from lack of oxygen. Mu Nanji, the Mu clan, loyal for generations. You can't. He choked out the words with great difficulty. Shut up, I frowned in disgust. You have no right to mention them. Crack, a crisp sound of bone breaking echoed through the hall. The emperor's head lolled at an unnatural angle, his eyes were wide open, filled with unyielding defiance and abject terror. I tossed his corpse aside like a piece of trash. Then, I turned around and stared at the dragon throne, the symbol of ultimate power in the realm. So this was the thing that drove countless men to fight tooth and nail, to shed blood and tears. It didn't look like much. I plopped down onto it without ceremony. Hard as a rock. Not nearly as comfortable as the beam in the temple back then. #21. I sat on the dragon throne, twirling the emperor's jade seal in my hand. At that moment, the doors to the imperial study were thrown open with a resounding crash. Xiao Jiyun, dressed in full military regalia, charged in at the head of a large contingent of imperial guards. When he saw the bodies strewn across the floor and me, sitting calmly on the dragon throne, he froze completely. You killed father. His voice trembled uncontrollably. Yep, I tossed the jade seal up in the air and caught it again. He was being too noisy. A collective gasp went up from the soldiers behind Xiao Jiyun, their eyes wide with horror as they stared at me. Mu Nanji, this is high treason, one of the generals pointed at me, shouting furiously. I shot him a lazy glance. The general froze, as if struck by lightning. His face turned deathly pale, and he crumpled to his knees, fainting clean away under the pressure of my demonic aura. Xiao Jiyun's face paled too, but he forced himself to stay calm, waving a hand to dismiss the others. Now, only the two of us remained in the imperial study, surrounded by the dead. Who exactly are you? Xiao Jiyun stared at me, his gaze intense and unwavering. You've already guessed, haven't you? I stood up from the dragon throne, walked over to him, and pressed the heavy jade seal into his hands. Starting today, you're the new emperor. Xiao Jiyun stared at me, dumbfounded by my actions. What? I said. You can have the throne. I patted him on the shoulder. I have no interest in this position, it's far too much trouble, having to meet with endless officials, approve piles of memorials every day, and worst of all, no sleeping in late. I'd much rather be a free-spirited cat. I smiled at his stunned expression. Of course, I'm not giving you this throne for nothing. I need you to do 3 things for me. First, rehabilitate the Mu clan's name, posthumously grant the title of Duke to General Mu, and bury him with the highest honors befitting his rank. Second, be kind to your people, be a good emperor. If I ever hear that you've become a tyrant like him, I'll come back in an instant and wring your neck myself. Third. I paused, leaning in to whisper in his ear, gather the finest dried fish in the land, every year, send it to the beam of the dilapidated temple outside the city. Just leave it there. Xiao Jiyun's mouth hung open, and he couldn't say a word for a long time. Do you understand, Your Majesty the new emperor? I patted his cheek lightly. He finally snapped out of his daze, looking down at the jade seal in his hands, then back up at me, his eyes filled with a complex mix of emotions. At last. He nodded slowly, his voice thick with emotion. Okay, I smiled, satisfied. Then that's settled. Farewell forever. I turned around and strode toward the door, without a backward glance. My revenge was complete. Mu Nanji's lingering resentment could finally rest in peace. Now, it was time to collect my reward. #22, with a leap, I transformed into a streak of black shadow, vanishing into the night that blanketed the capital. Behind me, a storm was about to erupt in the imperial court. A new era under a young emperor was about to begin, but none of that mattered to me anymore. I flew through the night, moving as fast as the wind, until I reached the familiar, run-down temple. The old monk was sitting cross-legged on a straw mat, his eyes closed as he chanted sutras. As if he had been waiting for me all along, I walked up to him and held out my hand. Where is it? The old monk opened his eyes and looked at me, letting out a long sigh. You have spilled far too much blood. I killed only those who deserved to die, I saved those who shouldn't have perished, and I even gave the realm a half-decent emperor. I scoffed. Isn't that enough merit? If not, then I'll just take the golden elixir by force. The old monk shook his head, a faint, helpless smile tugging at the corners of his lips. He reached into his robe and pulled out a simple, unadorned wooden box. When he opened it, an indescribable, intoxicating fragrance filled the entire hall in an instant. The 10,000-year golden elixir. My mouth watered uncontrollably. I snatched the box from him, slamming it shut with a loud *bang*, terrified that even a wisp of that heavenly scent might escape. Aren't you afraid that after I eat this elixir, my powers will skyrocket? And I'll come back to tear this rickety old temple down? I asked, narrowing my eyes at him. A monk does not tell lies. The old monk pressed his palms together in a gesture of piety. I made you a promise. And I intend to keep it. What you choose to do with your power from now on is your own karma. I snorted, not bothering to engage in his philosophical riddles. Hugging the box tightly to my chest, I was eager to find a quiet place to devour the elixir. Just as I was about to leave, something occurred to me, and I paused, turning back to ask him, what happened to Mu Nanji's soul? The old monk smiled gently. Her resentment has been laid to rest, her obsessions resolved. I have performed the necessary rituals to guide her into the cycle of reincarnation. In her next life, she will be born into an ordinary family, to live a life of peace, joy, and smooth sailing. I nodded. That was for the best. Being a great general, a hero, none of it compared to the simple blessing of living a peaceful, happy life. I didn't linger any longer. With a light leap, I jumped up onto the beam of the temple. After all, I was just a greedy cat. #23. I found a secluded cave nestled in the mountains, surrounded by clear streams and lush greenery. I set up a barrier around it, then opened the wooden box with eager, trembling hands. The golden elixir inside was even more fragrant than I had imagined. I popped it into my mouth and swallowed it in one gulp. I felt my body begin to undergo earth-shaking changes, as if every cell in my being was being remade, transformed. I didn't know how long it lasted, maybe 3 or 5 days, maybe a month, or even a year. When I finally opened my eyes again, the cave floor was already covered in a thick layer of moss. I felt a surge of power coursing through my veins, power beyond anything I had ever experienced before. With a single thought, my body began to shrink and transform. In the end, I turned back into my true form, a sleek, black cat with fur as dark as night, not a single stray hair to be seen. I stretched lazily, letting out a contented meow. Ah, this was the life. So much better than being trapped in a human body. I trotted over to the nearby stream and stared at my reflection in the clear water, majestic, imposing, utterly handsome. I nodded in satisfaction. My stomach rumbled, time for a snack. I thought of the dried fish Xiao Jiyun had promised me. I wondered if that new emperor had kept his word. I made up my mind to return to the capital for a visit. Not for the throne, not for the court, not for anything else, just to check if my dried fish had arrived. After all, that was the most important thing in a cat's, no, a demon's, life. As for the throne, as for the mortal world, let whoever cared about it take care of it. I licked my paws clean, then set off toward the capital, my steps light and graceful. A new adventure was about to begin. That's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. If you have any suggestions, feel free to leave a comment below. See you in the next video.